us for a conversation highlighting some of the innovative work being done in the Mississippi Delta. Across rural America, communities are navigating a complex web of challenges, from housing shortages and aging infrastructure to workforce gaps and shifting economic landscapes. But with those challenges come real opportunities to build systems that are more responsive and resilient. Today's conversation brings together leaders working at the intersection of housing and workforce development, two pillars that are essential to thriving rural economies. Whether it's creating affordable homes for low and moderate income workers, aligning training programs with local industry needs, or building partnerships across public, private, and nonprofit sectors, we're going to be sharing a few examples today of what's working, what's needed, and how we can scale and impact across regions. Rural LISC has been supporting practical yet transformational economic development strategies in this region for decades. Over the past few years, we've worked closely with communities, funders, and employers and developers to address some of the most pressing challenges facing this area. My name is Keegan McChesney, and I'm a senior program officer leading our housing and capacity building team for Rural LISC. My work in the Mississippi Delta focuses on expanding access to quality, affordable homes. And when I was thinking of folks to highlight, I immediately thought of the two people joining me today, Codney Washington and Audra Butler. So if you could please, Audra and then Codney, start with introducing yourself and the organizations you're working with.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Audra Butler. I'm the Area Director of Rural Housing for Communities Unlimited. Communities Unlimited is a rural development hub and community development finance institution, or CDFI, working across 7 states in the South, primarily in rural and persistent poverty communities. We have 8 service areas that we provide resources to rural communities, housing being one of those. And we help those communities to really focus on their economic development and their goals and lead the process for development. And again, we just show up with the resources in support of what those goals are for communities.
Yeah. And my name is Codney Washington. I am the director for We Center, We Build, where we focus on primarily youth vocational training. And then we partner that with affordable home construction, which is our rebuild component.
Wonderful. Part of why we want to talk to both of y'all today is because of a really innovative housing and workforce program that's been getting a lot of attention, and we're really glad to be supporting you all with, which is the Dream Build modular housing model. So maybe starting with Audra and then Codney, if you could talk about the origins of this model and how it made its way to Pine Bluff.
Absolutely. So about 3 years ago, CU got asked to join the Rural Collaborative for the Wells Fargo grant for wealth opportunities realized through home ownership. And as part of that, we were able to join a cohort of CDFIs and rural and native housing developers in expanding a volumetric modular housing model that was developed by an organization in Brownsville, Texas, Come Dream, Come Build. Most people know it as CDCB, and their partner, BC Workshop, out of Dallas, Texas. They developed this really interesting, innovative modular housing model that creates homes that are modular 12 by 24 modules that are then pieced together, put together on site into homes of varying sizes that grow with the homeowners over time. When we were asked to join that cohort, CU wasn't really in the housing space. We had stepped away several years ago, but we knew it was time for us to step back in, specifically in the Delta region. And this gave us an opportunity to do that in a way that we knew how to do it. And that's through supporting entrepreneurship in the Delta. And so we took this model and we approached Codney and the We Center and later We Build team and asked them to take a leap of faith with us and see if we could merge our view and our hopes for housing in the Delta and their workforce model and Codney's background in home construction and development, and bring all those things to fruition through modular housing in Pine Bluff. And it's taken a few years, but we're finally at a point where we have a home on the ground, and Codney has more in the works. But it started in Brownville, Texas, as a model to develop affordable homes for people who homeownership was often out of reach, but also without the need for really deep government subsidies to make them affordable. And that's really, the main impetus for Dream Build was you have to make homes affordable, and we're not sure that those federal subsidies will always be there. So again, we approach Codney, and I'm going to let him tell his side of it. It may be very different, but we asked him to take a leap of faith, and I think it's succeeded so far in bringing together our housing development and his goals with workforce development in Pine Bluff.
Well, yeah, you make it easy because what you said is exactly right. Just to add on to it, I think throughout 2022 and much of 2023, that Dream Build was still focused on building the overall business model that we're working to replicate here. And as Nick would often put it, they were building the plane as they were flying it, which resonates with our current approach because we're trying to take their approach to home manufacturing versus home building and try to tailor that to fit our area. The collaboration between us and CU, it's been a lot of we build, really trying to figure out what the build process would look like. And then I think for CU, it's been, and Audra, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been figuring out how and when we really engage the community on how we get people qualified for home ownership. So completing the first house served mainly as a proof of concept for our construction methods. Our ability to use apprenticeships, an apprenticeship labor force to build a specific part of the build process, which was the framing component in our first home, and then take that process and replicate it across the whole project as we move forward with our other homes. That said, I'm really optimistic about what will happen with our collaboration over the next 2 years. I think that we will witness substantial growth as we begin to construct more homes and CU increases community engagement. And during the process, we develop a strong workforce.
Fantastic. So much that I want to tease out there and learn more about, because I know there's been so much rich work across the years to get to that first home. So let's start with the apprenticeship component. And if you could really share more about who you're engaging, how you're engaging them, the skills they're learning, the support they're getting, and also what the space looks like and what y'all are actually doing in there.
Yeah. So, well, first we use NCCER, which is the National Center for Construction Education Research. That's the curriculum that we use to certify our apprentices. And we begin with a program called CORE, and that's designed to introduce students to the construction industry. And it provides a foundation by introducing the apprentices to essential elements that are relevant to all areas of construction. It highlights the industry's demand for skilled craft professionals. And then it starts off with an overview of the industry, period. And then we kind of follow up with safety protocols. We get into training on hand tools, power tools. We look at how do you read blueprints, wall systems, floor systems, and pretty much all the components of residential construction. Overall, CORE, it provides our students with a solid foundation for any specific field within the construction industry that they would choose to go into. And once they finish CORE, then our students can opt to specialize in various trades. They include carpentry, of course, HVAC, electrical work, plumbing, heavy equipment operations. We do landscaping, we do project management, and so forth. And one of the notable advantages, of course, of any apprenticeship program is the opportunity to what we say, earn while you learn. That's probably the hallmark of any apprenticeship program. And it allows apprentices to gain valuable hands-on experience in their chosen trade, of course, And then that on-job training, on-the-job training, as we like to say, is a focus for us through our We Build model. So we offer our trainees the chance to earn an income while they're learning. In some instances, we also provide transitional housing for individuals from our that are transitioning from youth detention centers back into society. Our vocational training programs, it didn't always function in the community. We started out actually in youth detention centers across the state of Arkansas. And as we visited those detention centers, and as we performed those programs, we noticed there being a need for a number of individuals who were interested in a full apprenticeship, to have some type of transition program for them to transition back out into society. So in our full apprenticeship programs, they also receive support in areas such as financial literacy. We help them with personal development. And then we also ultimately try to help them with achieving total independence. We have a firm belief and a philosophy that if we build the individual, then that individual can build the community.
Absolutely. It's so impressive all that you're doing on the apprenticeship side of things, and you built a home and you have more homes in the works. So if you could just talk a little bit more about the production facility y'all have set up, kind of an overview of that process, and then how you actually got that home to site and built for a new homeowner in Pine Bluff.
Yeah, so well, the process started with how do we take individuals who have no experience in building a home to the point of actually building a home. So what we did was, our plan, and I'll be honest with you, we haven't worked our plan all the way out through, but we started with framing, which is a major component of house construction. And we took that and we broke it down into a framing manual. And we developed the framing manual that breaks down each part of the build process. It will start with the floor system, each piece that they need, each component that they put together, and then it goes all the way through the wall systems, all the way through to the roof. And we use some 3D modeling and so forth, and we put together this big manual that then they in turn can take it into our shop. And once they've gone through core, they learn how to use all the equipment, they can actually start that process of building out those components, which turns into that home that they put together on site. So whereas for Dream Build, they will do 90% of their construction off-site, we do approximately 50% of our construction off-site within our shop area. And what we'll do is actually, like I said, we'll process all those different parts. We have a large framing table in our shop that we use to actually put wall units together. They'll build out those wall units. They'll label all those parts. And it's like Audra said, they're built in 12 by 24 boxes. So we'll do every part for a 4-box combination that creates a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. And then we'll label all those parts, and then they're loaded, and we transport those to the build site, where generally it will take us about 2 to 3 days to put that home up, working with the apprentices. So generally speaking, of course, our first home was proof of concept. Moving forward, when they actually build out those parts, they'll do multiple homes at one time. For instance, right now, we're still working on infrastructure, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but we're already set for the framework for, or we've already built out parts for 6 homes that'll go in that area where our first home went. But there was, we're still learning the process. There was a learning curve, of course, with the first home. We're learning more about how do we inventory, how do we build out parts, how do we inventory those parts, how do we pull those parts when we're ready to put walls together and so forth. So working out those processes is still something that we are actively trying to achieve.
Absolutely, and I imagine it will get easier with each home built as you refine the process and lessons learned. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Audra, we've been talking about the labor, the workforce, the apprentices, and then the actual construction process. Could you talk a bit more about the wraparound support that Communities Unlimited provides to potential home buyers, such as financial readiness and housing counseling, access to mortgages?
Absolutely. Before I do that, I do want to point out that what Codney's talking about with the workforce development is so essential to building an ecosystem that can support housing development. Yes, these young people are building the We Build homes and getting them in place, but they're also developing skills that'll be marketable in the workforce and not just for We Build, but for housing preservation and repair work, for, hopefully starting their own companies in the future and really supporting an ecosystem that's missing in a lot of our rural and our Delta areas. And housing's hard, and it's even harder if you don't have those professionals. And then, once you build those homes, you have to have people who can qualify to buy them, or they sit empty, or you're losing money, and developers, they don't want to come into those areas. So that's where we are hoping to fill the gap and provide those wraparound services. Some of that includes just general home buyer education, letting people know what that process looks like. It's intimidating to buy your first home. It's intimidating to people who have bought homes in the past to have to go through that process, but to not know how that process works. And if you come from a family who maybe didn't have home ownership as part of their living arrangements, or they'd inherited a home and had never bought a home and gone through that process, it can lead people to think that they will never be a homeowner because that process is just too hard. They're never going to qualify. So we want to break some of that stigma and some of that fear away from the homebuyer process and offer homebuyer education, walking people through the process, helping them understand what it means to, get a pre-approval, to understand your credit score, to understand a credit report and how to fix things on your credit report, or how to go through and make adjustments to your credit score by changing small habits to your financial habits. And so we start with group classes doing that. Then we can offer one-on-one housing counseling to individuals based off of that same thing. Is home ownership is a great goal. Let's get you ready for it. Let's break the stigma around that home buyer process. Some people are going to be ready very quickly to buy a home. And some people we may have to work with for a couple of years to get them to that point. And some people may realize home ownership's not for them, but they've gone through this process and they are, financially in a better place to be successful renters. And in the future, hopefully successful homeowners. And then we also want to be there to support people after they've bought their home. That way they can continue to be successful and know that there are resources if they ever fall behind, if, jobs change, or, their resources change. What does that mean for them? Or how do you maintain your home? How do you make sure that that's an asset that you can pass down to the next generation? And it is something that they want and something that's beneficial to them. So we want to, be part of that entire process from beginning to end. And then we also want to be a great partner and support to We Center and We Build in this, their efforts, both for modular housing and some of their other efforts. So helping to connect them to resources is also very important for us. We want to be there as long as they need us to be there. And so we're constantly looking to connect them to partners and funders, organizations like LISC, who can step in where CU may not be able to financially or with other services. So we just want to be a good partner, both to the community and to We Center, We Build.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure so many people out there listening are going to be really excited about this model and curious how they can adapt it themselves. Are there any kind of broadly applicable tools or resources that you would recommend about how you made the land more affordable, the homes more affordable, the labor, and ultimately kind of mortgage products or the home buying more affordable to folks?
So that's going to be very specific to each state and each area that you're in. In Arkansas, resources for home development are limited at the state level. When it comes to modular homes, we don't have a process for state approval of designs, which means there are some extra steps that have to go into getting designs or inspections completed. So the first thing that anybody who is interested in this, I would say you need to know what your state regulations are around modular and what resources are available. Is there legislation that makes that process easier? Is there legislation that needs to be put in place? And I know that's not something people want to hear when they're like, I just want to build homes. I just want to manufacture modular homes and make them affordable, that there may be some legislative work that has to be done. But in all reality, in some of the states, they haven't gotten that far yet. And so you may have to start there and start, immediately asking those questions of what does it take? Also, I cannot stress this enough. If you are looking into getting into modular homes, reach out to the folks at CDCB and talk to them about this process. What makes it affordable, besides Codney's work with apprenticeship programs, which is essential to making sure that these homes can be built at an affordable cost, is also the resources that have been poured into this by CDCB. They have designs and resources that through their work, over 10 years of work towards that they have put together that are then made available to expansion partners, at a much lower cost point than if you had to go out and hire a design firm, an engineering firm to come in and do all of that work. So that is another point that people can enter into this work, knowing that they have those resources available if they're going to be an expansion partner. That's not to say that there's not a upfront start cost, and there is. And with any project, you're going to have to figure out how to fund those. But as far as mortgage products go, as far as for the homeowner to get into these homes, they qualify for traditional mortgages, which are great. So there's a lot of mortgage options, from USDA and HUD and Fannie Mae and FHA loans, all the way to just your traditional mortgage through your bank. And so there's a lot of options there. CDCB also has a mortgage product that is specific to these modular homes that help people at kind of a lower qualification threshold get into these homes as well. So that's also an option. And then there's just CDFI partners across our network that are there with different loan products, different down payment and closing cost assistance products that can help people get into these homes and have payments that are affordable, and really something that they can maintain over time.
That's fantastic. Codney, anything to add? And particularly, there's a lot of folks out there who have building experience like yourself, and want to create affordable home ownership options, but run into all these barriers and market challenges. Is there any advice you'd offer to folks?
Yeah, well, I- of course, I think that the manufacturing model versus how we conventionally built stick-built homes in the past is definitely an option to look at when we start talking about affordability. My thing is, you know, nowadays I hear people talk about affordability and building affordable homes, but I don't hear the pricing fitting that model. I still see where there's a huge gap between what people can afford and what's being built. So I do like the modular model. Um, when we talk about looking at scalability, I think that's important. We are actually working with another group. AFC is an organization out of Houston, and they are in the process of building a micro school here in Pine Bluff. And we're actually looking to use the Dream Build model in the process of building out that school. So, looking at Dream Build's model, which Audra pointed out, the standard box is a 12 by 24 footprint. And so constructing various components of a house are all involved in that one 12 by 24 box and how you replicate that box in different ways. in their design, one box is called a wet box, which includes your bathroom and your kitchen, and then you have a dry box for areas like your bedroom and your living space, and then you have a suite box, which combines a bedroom and a bathroom. And by using those different boxes, we can create home configurations ranging from anywhere from 1 bedroom to 2 or 3 or even a 4 bedroom option. And the beauty of that model is its scalability. So you can start with a basic 1 bedroom setup, and over time, as your finances will allow you to, you can expand it later. Or for us, when we initially moved into the area that we're currently building, we did a community engagement where we got feedback from that community on what's needed. And so our model right now for the area that we're working in is built around a 3 bedroom, 2 bath option. But like I said, the model is very scalable.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about challenges and lessons learned. What hurdles have you encountered along the way, and how have you engaged allies in the process to help get to the point where you've actually produced your first home?
Well, for us, a significant challenge we face today, to be honest with you, is aging infrastructure.
Mm.
So currently we're collaborating with the city of Pine Bluff to address sewer infrastructure for the 12 homes that we plan to build adjacent to our first home. As the city has worked to remove old dilapidated houses over the years, well, we've discovered that sewer lines were taken out as well. And that posed a challenge for our upcoming development. So we really depend on the city to help us as much as possible as it relates to that infrastructure, as well as a robust code enforcement department that enforces ordinances that will kind of help us maintain the integrity of what we're creating. Another obstacle that we've encountered is the limited size of city lots in certain areas. It often falls short of what's needed for basic housing. And this sometimes requires us to go to zoning and for them to make adjustments that will allow us, for instance, to do a 10-foot setback versus an 11-foot setback off a property boundary. So ultimately, to achieve the vision, we definitely need, the city to understand the broader perspective and to assist us by rezoning and allowing for permitting variances in areas where current codes make construction challenging. But those have been our biggest challenges.
Anything to add, Audra?
Yeah, I just add to that one of the things that we see going into any community when we start talking about modular homes is that there is this stigma that these are, manufactured homes of 20 years ago, when they are modular homes that meet site-built standards, that look like a stick-built, site-built home. They are beautiful, sustainable homes. But when you go into a community and you say modular, there's an immediate thought that not in my backyard. I don't want it to look like what people would consider manufactured homes, and they have this idea that that's what it is. So we have to overcome that. So if someone's getting into this process, you have to start with those conversations and showing, real examples of what modular homes look like and why they are a benefit to the community. Because if you start looking at zoning and ordinances in a lot of communities, they have lumped in modular homes with manufactured homes, and they have relegated all of those to the furthest zoning district outside of the community, or they're always, kind of in the areas that people don't want to live. They're in business districts and things like that. Even in Pine Bluff, their zoning still reflects that. They've been great with in identifying that these qualify as site-built homes. And so there's been some great partnership there, but then we have to do that again when we go to the next community. So always being aware that you're going to have to overcome that stigma, and letting people know up front the quality that these homes are, whether it's the dream build model or another modular model. They are a benefit to the community. We also have to overcome some of that with our banking partners. So if they aren't familiar with the Dream Build product or what We Build is putting out there, their immediate thought process is we can't do a mortgage on that, or we're going to have to go through chattel loans. And again, you have to overcome that thought that these are manufactured homes that don't qualify for traditional mortgages, because they do. But once we get over that hurdle, they're all in. They're ready to partner, to start offering mortgages to qualified buyers. So just know you're going to have to do some work on the front end, whether that's with potential buyers, bankers, community members, or leaders. There's going to be some work up front to get their buy-in, but once they're in, they're all in.
That's really helpful context and advice for folks going down this path. So thank you both for that. Let's take a step back, maybe for folks that aren't familiar with Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the context of this community and how you see this program contributing to Pine Bluff's economic revitalization?
I think that's to me, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Pine Bluff, I grew up in Pine Bluff. I'm from Pine Bluff. During the 70s, 80s, very vibrant community. Population was growing over time. We've seen it decline. Actually, we are experiencing a population decline in Pine Bluff, and a lot of that is a result of a lot of that is a declining inner city area. With that, we also noticed that businesses have started to leave Pine Bluff. But the one thing that Pine Bluff still has is a strong youth population. And the one thing that we've noticed and within Pine Bluff is there is always this gap between the high school graduation rate and college graduation rate. For instance, high school graduation rate falls somewhere around 85, 87, up as close to 90%. And then college graduation rate is somewhere around 23% and so forth. So we see the vocational model, the career and technical education training component, as being a gap or a good way of filling that gap for individuals in the area. And then, of course, coupling that with the We Build model allows us to not only train the individuals, but also rebuild the community. And we hope that will serve as a catalyst to really redevelop, revitalize, revigorate what could be a vibrant community again. So we have high hopes for Pine Bluff. We think that once we've completed this first build out of the first area that we're developing, will serve as a model within Ward 3 that we're working, but it will serve as a model of what we can do throughout the other 3 wards in Pine Bluff. And so we're really excited about it.
Fantastic, guys. So much good work happening in Pine Bluff, and we're really glad to be working with so many great folks in the community and the broader region. Audra, could you maybe speak to how this model fits into the broader community and economic development ecosystem in the lower Mississippi Delta?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Codney said, Pine Bluff has experienced a declining population. It went from 50 to 60 years ago, a population of over 70,000 to, with the last census, under 50,000. So a pretty significant decline in a short amount of time. That being said, it is really the gateway into the Delta. And even though it has been a metropolitan area within the state for a long time, it has a lot of similarities to the rural communities in the Deep South and in the Arkansas Delta. And so we hope that this model will allow us to replicate this in other communities, but also to support, again, the ecosystem and the development of the communities themselves. We know that to have a thriving economy, you have to have housing for the workers. But housing can also be a solution for that economic need and growth. It can provide jobs, skilled laborers. It can have support other businesses outside of just the manufacturing or building of homes. So even though housing is needed for workers, it is also a driver of the economy. And we're starting what looks like a small operation, right, in Pine Bluff. But if you look at the impact that it's having in the neighborhoods themselves, talking about job growth, talking about skilled workforce, new homes, but also, and Codney hasn't mentioned this, the revitalization of the neighborhoods themselves through not just homes, but also preservation of existing homes, which then elevates the entirety of that neighborhood, which then elevates that community. People want to get involved. They, want to be part of that change. You see that in Pine Bluff. You see people who want to be a part of that, whether it's to go through the training programs, buy the homes, or just support those efforts. And we want to see that replicated in other areas in the Delta. And I think we can do that. And we've started by, really focusing on community engagement, getting people ready to talk about housing, identifying the needs for it. We've worked in Dumas, Arkansas, which is further south. We've had conversations with Stuttgart, Arkansas. We've had conversations with Louisville, Arkansas as well, with the lithium mining that is scheduled to start in the future there. And they're all looking at this model as something that they can replicate, both the workforce development and the housing development side of it, to support their local economy and the people who contribute to that economy. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it is a solution to multiple issues, a tool that we can use to help spur on housing development and economic growth.
Absolutely. So well said. Final question for you both. Share a little bit of just your near-term goals, and then when you think 5, maybe even 10 years into the future, what do you hope the impact of this program and your work will be?
Well, for me, I genuinely hope that Pine Bluff, along with other areas in the Delta, can really embrace the revitalization efforts. We're currently in discussions, just as Audra mentioned. Actually, I just started communicating with Stuttgart last week again. So we're talking with the Chamber of Commerce and the Mayor of Stuttgart about the potential for building homes in their community. And we're excited about that. We truly believe that, say in 5 years, when we drive through Pine Bluff, we will witness a transformed city and a place that, was once, faced with declining population. And we have over 300 vacant lots from demolished homes, and we just see that as being revitalized with vibrant neighborhoods. I envision a town that was, once thought of as quote unquote left for dead, coming back to life. So while I know the vision's achievable, I also recognize that the journey will involve a process filled with some challenges. However, I feel pretty confident that, by all of us working together as a community, and that's probably the most important piece of it, we can make the transformation a reality. I think some of the key stakeholders are here. We Build, Communities Unlimited, Rural LISC, of course, and other foundations like the King Foundation and so forth. But other organizations are all present, and I think that we all have an interest in making the Delta all that it can be. So the essential question now is how can we collaborate effectively towards our common goal? And I believe we're on the right track. And, I'm incredibly grateful for the partnership that we have with Communities Unlimited and Rural LISC. I'll be honest, Andy consistently checks in with me, which I really value, especially since, you can get really busy. So having someone like Andy reach out to discuss challenges and offer his support is invaluable. So I believe we are on the brink of a significant change, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
I couldn't agree more with Codney, and to hear him express that vision of Pine Bluff, what I would like to see, and it may be further out than 5 years, is to see other communities have and realize that vision. We get calls regularly from people throughout Arkansas, Texas, Mississippi, all of our service area, asking how do we do that? And we're like, we don't have the capacity yet. If I could clone Codney and clone what he is doing in Pine Bluff and start those types of manufacturing facilities and workforce development initiatives in communities across our service area, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But what we know it's going to take is finding other entrepreneurs in those areas, or people who have the drive to make this successful, and bring in those partners in order to make this work in other areas. And we know that the Dream Build model works in other ways. We see it with expansion partners throughout the United States who are using this model to develop homes. What we want to replicate is that workforce development and that full community transformation. And that takes a lot of time and effort. But I think in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, we're going to see Pine Bluff thrive. We're going to see a lot of work, not just from We Build, but from all of our community partners to make it thrive, to make it that vibrant city it once was. And then we also want to see that starting and succeeding in our other communities, whether that's further into the Delta, in the Appalachian area, in the Alabama Black Belt, in the colonias of South Texas. We want to see our communities thrive, and we think that this is a model that will help us do that while also addressing the rural housing crisis. So I'm excited to see what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but I think we can make a big difference with what we're doing, both with We Center, We Build, with housing preservation work, bringing all of that together and revitalizing our rural communities.
Well, thank you both so much. It truly is such an honor and a privilege to be working with you both and all the amazing folks in Pine Bluff, in the Delta, and across the country who are tackling these issues. You all inspire me, and I think you inspire so many other folks across the country who are working against such large challenges and so many barriers, but really making transformational change in your communities. And it's inspiring to hear your visions for the future. So thank you, Audra and Communities Unlimited. Thank you, Codney, and We Center, We Build. And thank you to the Walton Family Foundation for funding all these partners and all this work. Couldn't do it without all the partners, without all the funders, without all the residents and community members. So thank you all. And please reach out if you are interested in partnering or collaborating.